And then summer will end. Are you sure? Yep, I guess we're ready to take the next step after that. I can't believe we're here. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you were heading to class. Anxiety. Going back to school meant handing over the autonomy you'd had over the past weeks. You had very little control over what you did at school or who you shared a class with. It was with a heavy heart that you chose your outfit for your final day of freedom. Life was going to be different. You had come to think of the summer vacation as the norm, but school sucked up the majority of the year, whereas the summer vacation was just a respite in the middle. So, rather than it being different, it was kind of a return to the normal? What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. You dimly recognized that one year the pattern of school in summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted, one arm still out of a sleeve. You pulled it through and put your mind back to the present. The season had brought about plenty of changes on its own, like Kyra's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. Aw, saying goodbye to Kyra. You didn't really like her, aw. I have become extremely fond of her. The neighborhood was about to feel a lot emptier. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You'd agreed to see his mom off together. That's nice. Officially, the plan was that he would come over to bring you round to his house when she was ready to set off, but you both knew that you'd be hanging out for at least a little while beforehand. Kyra's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been a sudden change, thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people, but once he was able to adjust, he'd been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief for everyone. You turned to your desk where the box containing your accessories resided. A thought struck you like a bolt, and your eyes bored into the box. Should you wear an anklet for Cove's visit today? You had some nice ones that you hadn't used in a while. I thought of that immediately when I read accessory box. I'm like, anklet? Several anklets. Let's just calm down. We can wear one. One is okay. One is not trying too hard. Your heart pounded as you slipped the hoop through the clasp and fastened it in place. Would Cove spot it? Your face grew hot as you imagined how he might react. The next thought that crossed your mind was, it would only be polite. You couldn't wait. He knew your house. You could lounge in your room. I couldn't wait. You bounded down the stairs, your hand gliding over the rail. You wanted to make sure you got there first. If you didn't hurry, your moms might answer it. It was only a few minutes later when the doorbell rang. As you'd chosen to stand beside it to wait for Cove, there was no delay in pulling it open. Smooth. Cove was there, just as you'd expected. Seeing you, he flashed you a bright grin.
Hey.
Hi, Molly. Hi. Smiling, you beckoned for him to come in and follow you upstairs. Back up in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered them a seat, but you and Cove were long past those tentative stages of friendship. Your room was as familiar to him as his own. You watched as Cove sat down in your desk chair, his preferred spot. He rolled it closer to the bed to make it easier to chat, tweaking the angle so that he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, hands held in his lap. His actions weren't the ones of someone who planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When is your mom leaving?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. We've got some time. She's still got a shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to just keep hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his head, his gaze drifting out through the window, and chuckled. I can't believe she's already leaving. Just when I'm getting used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile tickling his cheeks. Time's going by so fast. He cocked his head thoughtfully before shrugging. He ran a hand through his hair before shaking his head, as if shaking off the topic like a dog whipping off water following a dip in the sea. Cove looked back to you, lips parted as if he was about to speak, but instead his eyes widened and his mouth closed into a tiny frown. Something had caught his attention. Oh, do you like my anklet, this old thing? Something wrapped around where the end of your leg met your foot. He cast his eyes back up to your face, then down to your ankle, and back to your face. Smooth! He repeated the process once, twice more, as if struggling to hold the two items in tandem. Maybe he was weighing up whether this could be a coincidence or not. Or maybe he was just too shy to verbalize his thoughts, or was still trying to find the words, and this was the most he could manage. The attention made you feel... so many emotions right now. Either bashful or thrilled. I'll flip for it. Heads for bashful, tails for thrilled. Hiya! Heads. Okay, we're going bashful. You almost wanted to tuck your feet away and out of Cove's intent focus, but doing so would muddle your message further. On his next glance back to your face, Cove saw your expression had shifted. You watched as his bewilderment eroded into mortification as he realized that he had been caught staring. He quickly spun in the chair to face the wall instead, allowing you to glimpse the flush that had spread all the way to his ears. Smooth! He twisted in his seat, wringing his hands indeterminately, avoiding looking in your direction again. It seemed that he decided against saying anything at all. Yep, I'm just gonna leave it. Because I would be like, no, it wasn't that. I'm not gonna make an issue out of this. Cove mumbled something unintelligible as he slumped lower. With how he was hunched over, the quiet words had no chance of reaching you. You weren't going to get anything out of him in this state. You waited for him to come around before speaking again. Finally, he piped up very softly.
That's,
Oh, man, this guy's so brave.
Did you do it because of what I said before? I mean, you know.
The last few words were whispered as though they were a precious secret.
The ankle bracelet.
Maybe? His eyes squeezed shut. You had no idea if the answer made him feel better or more nervous. He eventually looked down at his lap, where his fingers were flexing and curling in an awkward dance of nerves. His chest rose as he breathed deep.
Well, it looks good on you.
Your heart skittered in your chest like a stone skipping across water. One big leap from the unexpected compliment, followed by a series of shorter ones as you absorbed the words. You beamed at him. He was looking at you again at last and returned the smile shyly. This really couldn't have worked out better, you thought. Nope. And there was nothing else he could add after that. There's nothing else to say. Honestly. The conversation lapsed into another comfortable lull. Cove swung his feet underneath the seat of the chair, eyes resting on you. Having him over here was so nice. No matter how you spent the time, you always felt better for being in his company. You couldn't help but adore him, both as a friend and in a way that plucked at your heart, a vague yearning for more. Maybe it was because summer was almost over that your feelings were rushing in on you now, like high tide at the end of a long day. Summer was such a meaningful time for the two of you. Not only because it was when you first met, but because it was a season that you could spend almost entirely as you pleased, and you both chose to spend it together. I could confess. We could confess right now, but I would never have the courage to do it, even after everything that's happened. I mean, I just told him I wore an ankle bracelet because he told me he liked people in ankle bracelets, but there's that, and then there's like, I really like you. The two things are a little bit different, right? I'm not crazy. I know what I feel. I want to, but I'm also scared, and I'm not ready. I'm too scared. Where you were now felt safe. It was good. You couldn't handle the possibility of messing it up. The two of you tried to find something to say now. Luckily, it didn't end up being that hard.
This was a really nice summer.
It was alright. I've had better. Totally. I'm not nervous at all. Cove, still nestled cozily in your chair, smiled at your response. How are your fish doing?
Really good. Things in the tank are stable and everybody looks healthy.
That was nice to hear. You'd learned from Cove how hard it was to maintain an aquarium.
Flash has been busy. Keeps darting between the plants and out again when I walk by, like a game of peekaboo.
That's my boy. Or hide and seek.
Yeah.
Cove idly glanced out of the window. He gave a resigned sigh.
It's gonna be harder to surf. You know, with school and getting colder out. I don't want to get rusty.
I'm over surfing now. I like surfing, but I wish it liked me. Surfing's cool when we can. It's too bad we can't make the most of the waves, but there's other fun stuff to do. He gave a light smile, coupled with a shrug as response. Won't be long until we get our grades for that summer work we did. Man, we're just referencing all the things we did. Cove's bangs fluttered as he huffed, sinking in the chair.
I'm not looking forward to that.
We'll just have to see what mine are like. Cove looked at you, eyes bright.
Things will work out. I know it. Do you think we'll see Miranda around school this year?
Probably. She could be in one of our classes again. Yeah, it would be nice to see her again.
Molly! Cove!
The sudden call from downstairs caught you both unaware. You'd nearly forgotten the world outside your room. From the guilty look on his face, Cove had done the same.
Just had a call. Cove's mom is ready to go. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum.
You doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Miss Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way there was painfully slow, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. His whole body tensed leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you both could cross the street.
Oh.
The door's open. Dad must be taking her stuff out.
He swallowed hard. It's gonna be tough saying goodbye.
She's really gonna leave.
Yeah, I give his back a pat. Your motion was soft, and at first you weren't sure if he even noticed. By the third, Cove released the tension in his shoulders. He looked at you like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. You nervously bit your bottom lip and nodded, giving his back a couple more reassuring pats.
Thanks.
At that, some of the conflict warring on his face eased a bit. Together you went across the street and inside his house, finding his parents in the living room surrounded by his mom's packed things.
Hey, kids!
Good timing! I just called a taxi.
Hi.
And hi, Molly. So glad I got to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer. I finally got to put a face to the name I've heard so many times.
She winked, and Cove pouted on cue over the teasing. I'm really happy I got to meet you too.
Hopefully, it won't be too long before we see each other again.
Nodding, Kyra turned her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile, and then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly. Aww.
I'm so glad.
And I'm so happy this trip was a success.
Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. And then Cove stiffened. Kyra loosened her hold on him enough to study his face, concerned. She spoke her next words in a whisper that had been meant just for her son.
What do you think?
Do you want to unshelve it?
Raising an eyebrow, Cliff watched them carefully. His smile began to falter.
What's wrong?
Cove sighed, and his gaze flickered over to you for a moment. And then just as quick, it was back on his parents.
It's okay.
Really?
Are you sure?
I don't want to do it now. I can tell Dad later.
Were you in talks of, like, going to try and stay more with your mom? Nervously, you watched the exchange with the growing suspicion that Cove didn't want to have that conversation while you were there. You wondered if you should offer to leave when Kyra gave Cove a pat on the head.
All right.
You can always call me if you want me to be part of the conversation, okay?
I'll call. Thanks, Mom.
Cliff still looked baffled about what Kyra and Cove were referring to, but you watched as his shoulders slowly relaxed. You figured that he decided to wait for Cove to be ready to talk to him. And with Cliff's silence, things seemed to be settled for now. After that, it wasn't long before the taxi arrived, rolling up in front of the house and in clear view of the open door. Kyra stood up, smiling sadly.
Well,
That's my ride.
Yeah.
The matching reply got a chuckle out of Kyra as you all filed out of the house. Father and son went with Kyra's bags in hand. Once outside, you spotted your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was also with them. He stood uncomfortably, and he waved as soon as you noticed him.
what's up?
Hey, Molly. Hi, Cove.
When did you get here?
My dad dropped me off just a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started.
Sorry.
You picked a busy time.
Derek couldn't even look at Cove. He nervously kept rolling a pebble with the bottom of his shoe.
Sorry.
I wasn't even thinking that your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry, dude.
What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here.
It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving.
I think so too.
It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but their reassuring words soothed his worries. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself.
Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you.
Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help?
Nah.
Don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set.
In that short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kyra took one last look at everyone and sighed.
All right, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out.
The little crowd that had formed around started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling, but Kyra still made no move to get into the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove.
I'll call when I get to the airport and when I make it to Nevada.
Also, you better call the moment you walk in the door at home. Otherwise, we'll be wondering all night if you got into trouble on the way there.
Can do.
I can do that.
And could you call tomorrow too? So I can tell you how school went?
Of course! I want to hear all about it.
Kyra put a hand on Cove's head and affectionately ruffled his hair one last time. She then let go, only to move on to squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead.
Mom?
Cove.
I love you so much, baby!
She was chuckling by the time she freed him and rounded things off with a small tap to the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed at his face with a grin. Finally, she walked to the car while waving and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad and then wrapped an arm across his back. Yay!
Bye.
Bye, Mom.
Bye! Travel safe!
Kyra rolled down the window and stuck her head out of it. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff.
See you again!
Before she was out of sight, you decided to... Yeah, I would have called out too. As you added your voice to the others, you watched Kyra's smile grow larger. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a few steps out into the empty street, still looking in the direction his mom went. He smiled quietly, deep in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulling you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her.
This was a great vacation, huh?
Summer isn't over until the second I fall asleep, indeed.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Cove walked back over to the group, still genuinely happy. Derek grinned at him welcomingly, and everyone else there smiled at him, even Elizabeth.
Well,
Ma clapped her hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present.
It's almost lunchtime. I think I'll put something special together.
Her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled.
I bet you could use some help with that. That'd be absolutely wonderful.
Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed.
Is there something I could do?
Your moms exchanged a fond expression. Ma shook her head.
How sweet.
That's very sweet, Derek, but it's alright. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors.
Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away, discouraged.
It's okay.
I don't mind.
He was a little bashful about it. He wondered if Mom's joke had just reminded him that he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It was getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment was meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Ma tried again to get things moving forward.
Why don't you kids go have fun? You all can come back in about an hour. We'll make enough for everyone.
Mom nodded in agreement.
Sounds good.
Another stunning idea, Lonnie. Thanks.
Thank you.
That sounds like a plan, then. I don't want to cramp your style. I've got some stuff to work on, so I can be out of your hair this afternoon.
You should come by later, too. No reason you should be the odd man out.
Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his neck nervously. He grinned a wavering but pleased smile.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate the invite.
He looked over the assembled crowd with knowing glances.
I can help too. With as many people as you're feeding, that's going to be a lot of food.
Didn't you hear what we told Derek? It wouldn't be fair to make you cook when we're the ones who are inviting you in.
Ma raised an eyebrow when Cliff waved it off.
Come on.
I insist. Derek would be missing time with his pals. This would be a break for me. I'm quite the chef.
It's true. Ma and Mom exchanged further glances before Mom shrugged.
True.
An airtight argument. If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Chef Cliff.
Cliff's grin widened and seemed more hyped than you'd expect him to be about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fond smile on his face.
Then all us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos are staying out? Maybe not all of them.
Ma tilted her head, a silent question for Elizabeth. Your sister thought for a moment.
All right.
I'll stay with the kids.
That's fantastic.
Both your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Elizabeth looked at you and the others, a curious expression on her face.
So?
What now? You silently wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you to avoid getting roped into work. Then again, she could just genuinely want to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question.
Want to go down to the shopping street? It's been a while, and I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there 1,001 times. It's new to me.
Let's do it! You strolled across the road as a group, down to the beach and then to the left. It took less than 15 minutes to arrive, one of the conveniences of Sunset Bird. The four of you looked around at the familiar shops, trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well.
That's so cool!
He ran over to a street magician who was currently doing a card trick for a group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam on his face.
What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or do you just show up and start doing stuff?
Who would you even ask? It's a public street. Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat? Please. Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. Derek chuckled, his eyes searching up and down the scene.
Maybe?
Maybe there's a boss of the shopping street. No one does any of this around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls.
It's different if someone wants a real store. But here, I'm pretty sure people are just putting on their little shows whenever they want and do whatever.
That's so neat! Would we be allowed to do something too?
Cove laughed, and Derek began almost vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes.
What would we do? Well, I don't know what. Not yet. I mean, I just found out it's a possibility, you know?
But
There's gotta be something. We know cool stuff. I'm sure if we think about it, we could plan a show that'd really get a crowd pumped.
He needs to, abandon the bad ideas stat. I'll give a look to the other two. Derek continued to brainstorm out loud about different potential performances while you glanced over at Cove and Elizabeth.
I mean, I can bounce a soccer ball on my head. Last time I tried, I got 8 bounces before it fell. I wouldn't bring a ball here.
why?
Cove gestured to everything around. The stalls, the people, all the colorful chaos that made up the shopping street.
Would you want to chase a lost ball here? And what if it hits somebody? Even if you're good, someone else could bump into you. That's true.
Derek thought about it some more. Then he watched another performer, a woman doing tricks with 2 small dogs. One was fluffy and cream-colored, while the other was a cool gray. The woman held up rings. Both animals jumped through the openings, happy to receive a treat at the end. Derek brightened.
Maybe I'll teach crabs how to race.
Crabs?
It could work.
With some amusement, the gang continued to peruse the stalls. Elizabeth found some earrings with a dangling, badly misprinted globe that everyone laughed at. Cove picked out a blob as Iceland, but Derek thought that it had to be Greenland. You know this is a world with what looks like 9 continents? I think you're both wrong. I have to be the contrarian. No, it's Australia. The other 3 giggled at your interjection. Suddenly, Cove froze. You stared at him and then tried to see what caught his attention. When you saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. Oh god, is it Jeremy? Between the crowds, his bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in a kitchen sink. Best description of his haircut ever. It was Jeremy. Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, and his eyes widened in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned and Cove tensed up. He couldn't help but remember the last time you'd seen Jeremy at Miranda's birthday party. No wonder Cove was already defensive. I couldn't wave after what happened. I don't know if I'd glare, because he hurt my feelings last time. I'd either stand there shocked or look away. You know what? I'll stand there shocked. Why was Jeremy here? Of all the days he could go shopping. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint of a clue. Jeremy simply scoffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled loudly.
I'm glad he's not gonna start anything.
He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk.
See? That was the mean kid.
What?
She still didn't get it. That first summer day hadn't made nearly as much of an impression on her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it off.
Just forget about him.
I already have. He laughed and Cove smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Your eyes wandered over to where Jeremy disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him either. He was only going to be in town for a vacation with the parents he hated. That glimpse was probably the last time you would ever see him. Wow, you can just go after Jeremy? Interesting. Why would you do that? Why would you actively seek him out? But I am curious. For science? I'll be back. Molly? I won't be long. You headed off after Jeremy, cutting into the crowd he disappeared into. It didn't take long until you spied his distinct figure. You caught up with him, ducking in between a tourist couple and sidestepping into the side of the street he'd wandered into. You took a breath. Jeremy? Jeremy's slouched posture stiffened, and his neck turned to look over his shoulder. His scowl deepened when he saw it was you.
What now? Do you think looking at somebody means they're inviting you to start following them? Are you too stupid to get that I don't want to talk with you?
You're not going to be here much longer, are you?
Oh, that's right. I'm amazed a pea-brain like you could figure that without me having to spell it out. So what? I'm leaving in a few days. School starts next week. It's not like I can live here and what? Teleport to classes?
So you liked it here. Jeremy ended up liking it here, because now he's salty. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Don't come back. You know what? I'm not gonna say anything. You stared at him and he glared back with confusion. Jeremy stuck out his tongue and stalked off, not bothering to say anything in response. When you couldn't see him anymore, you shook your head. That was it then. I knew that would baffle him, and I'm so glad I just, stared at him. You turned around and saw Cove, Derek, and your sister shuffling through the crowd. Derek saw you and ran forward, the other two following close.
Are you alright?
I'm okay. I guess Jeremy won't be around anymore.
So what?
Okay? Who cares about the kid? Cove shrugged in a she has a point kind of way. You nodded. There wasn't anything else to do about it now. Jeremy was unlike anyone you had ever met before. He was kind of pitiful. Sorry, Jeremy. I love you. You and the group moved on from the stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to the joking! Yay! You all enjoyed what little time you had left as Elizabeth mentioned the hour was almost up. The little trip had flown by and lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the balls of his feet.
Okay.
Come on, guys, let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving.
Homebound, here we go! Cove stretched one of his arms lazily.
Let's go then.
You looked at him appraisingly. Carry you back to the house? I could never. That's amazing, though. No, I can't. Well, hold on. Science. Double science. I'm gonna come back, because I would never, but I'm curious. Hey, Cove.
Yeah?
I wanted to ask you something. Could you carry me home?
What?
Cove turned red, obviously flustered. He told him it was a special occasion. A piggyback ride, you know. I kind of wanted a piggyback ride from somebody. I hope that's okay. Cove sighed and shook his head. Elizabeth and Derek became a chorus of laughter. Well, please? Maybe?
Alright.
That's amazing. I will reload, but I'm just curious if there's a picture of this. Cove stepped over to you. He looked like he couldn't believe what he was doing. Your lips quirked into a large smile. Thank you, Cove! He carefully crouched down in front of you so that you could climb on. It took a little bit of clambering to get yourself completely up on Cove's back. However, when Cove slipped his arms under your legs and stood up, you felt very secure. Well, I'm thrilled that he was okay with it, but I would never subject him to that. Then you followed Elizabeth as she took it upon herself to lead the way home. She walked fast, much faster than Derek preferred. She kept gaining a lead, and then Derek would jog back up to the group. With Cove's long legs, he had no trouble keeping up. I would walk side by side with Cove. You kept close to your neighbor. You both chatted about things you'd seen at the shopping street, with Derek chiming in every so often. You caught Cove smiling at you a couple times. He was happy you were spending time with him, and that you didn't ask to get a piggyback ride. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time you had made it back. Derek got the front door and held it open for everyone as you each moseyed inside. Thank you. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved.
Welcome back, everyone! You made it just in time.
Hey.
I hope you're hungry. So, did everyone have a nice time out?
She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware have already been placed out. You took your normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you, and Derek took the seat to your left. Cove sat on your right. Derek to the left of me, Cove to my right.
Yeah.
We had a great time.
It was fine.
I had fun.
The bank heist went off without a hitch. I really liked it.
That's good in my book.
Casually, Mr. Holden sat in the empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses on the table. She looked down at the gathering.
It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. I can't remember the last time we've had a group this big over for a meal. Can you pass the drinks down to the other side? Make sure you all get one. Sure.
Those close to the cups obliged and started offering waters around. As everything got set up, Ma chided Elizabeth to take her elbows off the table.
Now.
And you shouldn't slouch.
She pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table.
Oops.
Mr. Holden seemed unsure about all the sudden attention and carefully rearranged his posture to something suitable for a fancy dinner. He smiled sheepishly at Ma. Elizabeth rolled her eyes, and Ma gave a level look at her.
You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house either.
Elizabeth groaned, long and long-suffering. Ma giggled, and Mr. Holden chuckled.
Not bad.
The lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here.
Derek blushed, but it was true. His posture was upright and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. His table manners, on top of all his attempts to aid your parents, made him the model of meal attendee behavior.
Aw.
It's nothing. It's true, though. You have been a lovely guest. I've noticed that, too. It's always nice when you stay over, Derek.
Derek smiled and sat a little taller in his chair. And do you have anything good to say about our other guest? She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Or is there just nothing to say?
Well, Cove is my number 1, but he does still clean his hands by wiping them on his pants.
Cove. Cove frowned at that and absent-mindedly brushed his hands on his pant legs. Your moms laughed lightly.
There.
Elizabeth, you should know. After all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore.
Cove smiled awkwardly.
Thanks.
Manners schmanners.
Yeah, I'll tease Cove. Don't think I'm gonna let the pants thing go. Cove looked over at the window, not wanting to face the truth. Everyone ate their meal together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you and the others played a couple games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. The time passed by quickly, and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holden talked to your moms, and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as his dad finished up, he would be leaving.
It'd be cool to stay, but we have some stuff to do before everything closes today.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. Could you move? I need the phone. Cove raised an eyebrow, and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He sidestepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you figured was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be on there for a while. You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. It seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone started saying their various farewells.
Talk to you later.
See you later, Cove. We gotta do this again sometime. Yeah, see you.
Cove turned to you and smiled slightly.
Bye, Molly.
I'll give you a nudge. You elbowed Cove's shoulder playfully. I'll see you later.
I'd hope so. It's been fun.
He grinned widely and nudged you back. There was a warm look in his eyes that you wondered when you'd see again.
Dude.
Seriously, dude, we'll have to hang out later. I'm gonna miss you during school.
He offered Cove a high five, and the two boys clapped their hands together. Nice. Cove and his dad left soon after that. Your parents started cleaning up the house, and Elizabeth was still chatting to her friends on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He elected to stay outside in front of the house to wait for his dad to pick him up. You decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze blew through your hair, and Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot.
Thanks for waiting with me.
He kicked at the ground distractedly.
Well,
Dad's still gonna be a while, so do you want to go for a walk?
Okay. The two of you walked down the street again, just wandering without a destination planned. It was a quiet stroll. Too quiet for Derek being the company. You turned to him when you had noticed that he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow, you ended up at the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, now you noticed a frown creeping on his face. Derek smiled when he realized you were watching. At least, his mouth was turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away and the smile fell off his face. His eyes stared intently at the ground and you raised an eyebrow. Yes? Is everything okay?
I'm a little sad. It's just, with school starting back up again, it's gonna be harder to visit. I'm gonna have homework and clubs and practices and everything else.
this sucks.
It really sucks we go to different schools.
His face screwed up and his fists were closed tightly together. This was really concerning him.
What if we don't have time?
Yes, let's put some optimism into it. We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked up at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. A plane flew high with a jet stream trailing behind it. Then he turned to the ground again. Derek's face was tilted far enough down that it was harder to read his expression.
Hey Molly, I actually wanted to talk to you about something. If you don't mind.
Well, I'm flattered, but you got some stiff competition. There was a pause, and you waited for him to finish his thought.
Sorry.
I was just kind of wondering, do you like guys at all? Like, would you ever want to be with someone who was a boy? Sorry if that's weird to ask.
I could be with a guy.
Okay. Then,
He hesitated before finishing his question.
So,
what I mean is, just, is there any guy you think is kind of cool that you like around here? Not at school or anything like that.
Oh, Derek, you're such a cutie. He ducked his head further. He thought about it. Mr. Holden. I feel like I should let him know where I stand. Well, I like Cove. Derek chuckled and didn't look at all surprised.
Yeah, I kind of thought so. That's cool. I really hope things work out. Thanks for answering my random questions.
He shot you a thumbs up. You took it so well. I'm so proud of you. Can I give you a hug?
I hope we'll always be friends, no matter what. Even if we don't see each other for a long time, or if we get really busy, I still hope.
He cut himself off and met your eyes. There was something serious to him, sincerely worried that you'd fall out of friendship. We're always going to be friends. Derek smiled, mostly to himself. He seemed a little more like the usual.
Then for sure we have to make the most of next year. Then the year after that, and the year after that.
He rambled on for a while about things.
We'll just make the most of every year.
Right. You smiled and felt like your friendship was still strong. That's good. Don't worry, Derek, you'll get your turn. You didn't spend much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so you both made your way back to your street. Derek found all kinds of fun things to talk about as you walked side by side back to your street. Then he plopped down on the curb outside your house, hugging your arms around your legs. His voice was comforting, and you were grateful that Derek was keeping you both distracted from the inevitable. For a little while longer, it was still summer vacation. You listened while he excitedly told you all about the new action movie coming out in a few months. And then you watched his brow pinch as he described the new ball tricks he'd been working on perfecting. It was easy to laugh along to his tales. You enjoyed the shine in his green eyes most when the conversation shifted to funny stories about his little brothers. It was almost hard to believe that much time had passed at all when a couple of short honks rang out in the neighborhood. Snickering, Derek scratched the back of his neck.
Dad's here.
He looked up the street and spotted the van coming around the corner. Mrs. Suarez cheerily waved her arm out the window from the shotgun seat.
Oh, and Mom too. Guess we know what that means.
Derek rose to his feet and brushed some dirt off his pants. You followed his lead as the car rolled to a stop in front of your house. The van's side door slowly and laboriously opened. On the inside was Jorge with a victoriously wide grin as he tugged the heavy door open the rest of the way so Derek had a way in.
Hi.
Nicholas was there too. You heard him well before you saw him.
We're here!
Looking past Jorge, you found Nicholas bouncing against his straps in full force.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Shyly, you waved hello to both brothers. Jorge nodded with a tiny smile, but Nicholas was too absorbed in trying to tell Derek something to really notice. Holding onto the sides of the open door, Derek leaned into the car to give Nicholas a moment of one-on-one attention. You could hear the kids' giggles over everything else. Faintly, you could hear that a conversation was happening between Derek's parents, but you couldn't make out a single word. And before you could do anything with that thought, Derek glanced over his shoulder. He paused and held your gaze softly. And then, Derek let go of the car to stand back in front of you one last time.
I've gotta go. Well, you know that, but bye. It was really cool hanging out today and this summer.
Not even his usual cheery enthusiasm could keep his sadness away this time. His voice grew quieter and he scuffed his foot on the pavement.
We had a good summer break, huh?
But it had to end sometime.
Looks like my summer vacation is over. I'm glad we met before it started. Derek nodded bashfully with reddening cheeks. The fondness in his expression had your stomach feeling like it was full of butterflies. Uh-oh, Derek's making plays.
Same. We didn't miss anything.
High five, my dude. Raising your hand high, Derek met your challenge. He leapt up and put his weight behind the slap. You laughed and shook the sting from your hand. But the time had finally come, and Derek hopped up into the cabin of the van. Jorge and Nicholas waved to you from their seats. The adults shouted their goodbyes next from the front. You laughed at their muffled voices, and Mrs. Suarez leaned out her window.
Have a good one.
We realize you probably couldn't hear us. Mr. Suarez and I just wanted to say goodbye, Molly. Yes, goodbye.
Derek's dad leaned over his wife to give his farewells. Come back soon! Pressing the palms of your hands together, you begged with big, pleading eyes. Mrs. Suarez gave you a soft smile.
I'm sure we will. Take care, Molly.
Then Derek closed the door for Jorge this time. He moved the massive door with much more ease. After that, the car moved further down the street before flipping around to drive up the hill and out of the neighborhood. You remained rooted there to the curb and watched the Suarez family drive away. You were relieved you got a chance to see the whole family again. But they were gone and you were left to your own devices. Pivoting around, you made your way inside. Now that it was quiet, you yawned and decided that it was a good time to settle in for the night. Stretching your arms over your head, you noticed that the living room and the phone happened to be free. Nice. Yo, Lee! You picked up the receiver and quickly punched in the familiar number while going to take a seat on the couch. Soon enough, after explaining the situation to the housekeeper, Lee answered.
Hey!
Hi, Lee. Can you talk?
Definitely. We practically have to. My gosh, can you believe it's almost time for school to start? What happened to our summer?
School starts first thing tomorrow for me.
Boo.
Ew. And I thought starting next week was bad enough.
Enjoy your last week.
Oh, I will. I hope you'll survive your first day.
Me too. I need a good year.
Ditto. And at least summer was nice while it lasted, right? We were busy.
Yeah. Fondly, you thought about all the best memories you made this summer. Lee was there for some, but there were still many you hadn't filled her in on yet. Let's reminisce. You began to speak about... Oh my goodness, you can do all of these? I mean, we gotta talk about the soiree. I went to a soiree at my mom's country club. There was lots of food, dancing, and people dressed up formally.
Cool.
Oh, I've been to one of those. They're cool, but how did it go for you?
Cove was my date.
No way! You asked him on a date? Like a date?
Yeah.
Ooh!
Well, he kind of asked to come first.
Really? That is unreal, Molly.
After laughing a bit, you dove into telling Lee everything about your night with Cove. You enjoyed sharing that memory with her. What else should I share? I guess I can do all of these. Let's talk about Miranda's birthday party. I went with Cove to a birthday party. It was for a classmate we had, Miranda.
Ooh.
Birthday parties are always fun.
There was a bounce house, games, and cake and ice cream.
She knows how to throw a party.
Let's see. Getting to hang out with Miranda was fun.
I'm glad. One of these days I'd like to meet her.
Yeah, I'd like that too. The road trip. I went on a vacation. Cove's parents ended up inviting my whole family on an RV road trip.
Really?
Whoa, that's awesome!
It was a 3-day trip and we visited the Redwood National Forest.
Lucky?
Cove was flirting with me on the trip. So Cove snuck up into the loft where I was staying.
What?
Cove did what? Wait! Start at the beginning.
It took a while until you stopped laughing from Lee's reaction long enough to tell her every detail of the story. She excitedly squealed more than once.
I can't believe you've been holding out on me with such a juicy story.
Nothing really happened.
Keep telling yourself that. You have to keep me updated on what happens next.
It was hard to focus on what she was saying. Your face was probably red right now just thinking about what happened. And we also went on a big shopping trip. There was this day that Mom and Ma took me and Elizabeth on a big supply shopping trip.
What made that so memorable?
Lee chuckled, but you could hear the curiosity in her voice. I stayed out late, hanging out with Cove.
Ooh, what were you two up to?
This whole phone call is just like, and then Cove did this, and then Cove did that, and then I did that with Cove, and we did this with Cove. It wasn't hard to imagine the teasing look Lee must have had on her face. Her imagination was already running far too wild. Nothing crazy happened.
Boo!
We just got caught up with stuff. The day was over before we knew it.
Those are always good days.
Yeah. And then we went to the library. I went to the library to work on assignments.
What?
Hey, I thought we were supposed to be talking about the good parts of summer.
Cove tried to help me cheat, he did. It was fun, because I got to hang out with Derek and Cove.
Well, that's cool. Hanging with the boys must have saved the whole day.
I think so too. And then, that time we went to Cove's house for dinner. One night, Cove's parents invited me over for dinner at their house for the first time. Mr. Holden made Mexican food. The meal was good.
Mexican is yummy, so that's no surprise. What else happened?
I got to name one of Cove's pet fish.
What did you pick?
Flash.
Wow. Why hasn't Cove asked me to name one of his fish? He has a bunch, right?
That had you bursting into laughter. You almost accidentally dropped the phone. She giggled in return. What was your big highlight of the summer, Lee?
Talking to you is always the best part of my summer.
Even though it was a phone call, you just knew that Lee was winking at you. Good, I'm glad you picked the right answer. That had Lee laughing hard for a few moments.
All right.
Okay. So a high point for me was when I took that trip with my parents to Europe. That was amazing.
You and Lee continued to go over your adventures until you both were yawning to each other over the phone. At that, you decided it was time to say goodbye for now. You did have school to wake up for in the morning. Bye, Lee.
Bye.
Night, Molly. Talk to you later.
I didn't get to do all my moments. Oh well. You left the phone on the side table for now. Looking at the clock on the wall, you saw that there was only about 10 minutes until your moms would be insisting you had to go to bed so you could be rested enough for school. You stretched your legs out on the couch and sighed in defeat, watching the minute hand change 1 minute closer to bedtime. You rearranged yourself, feeling restless, and looked out the window. Startled initially, you spotted a figure out in the hills. It was Cove! When the surprise faded, you realized it really wasn't that much of a shock at all. It was exactly something Cove would do. Smack! Grinning, you sneakily crept over to the window. When you were right in front of the glass, you slapped both your hands hard against it. Cove's body visibly jumped where he stood, and his head whipped around trying to find the source of the noise. When he noticed the clattering in the window behind him, a window from your house, he tried to shake his head in disapproval, but even from that distance, you knew he was smiling. Amused with your own antics, you waved at Cove. Sure, I'd talk to him. Strolling casually, you went over to the front door. Ooh, fireflies! When you arrived, you noticed how many fireflies there were out that night. They drifted along lazily, barely minding your presence as you waded through to reach the top of the hill. Cove turned towards you as you approached, and you noticed right away that Cove was still a little sour about the scare.
Hi.
Nervously, you smiled and pulled at a loose string hanging off of your shirt. Hi. He dramatically sighed. You hoped that meant he was over your silly stunt. What are you doing out here?
Nothing.
Not really.
He shrugged, seeming unhappy with his own answer. You stared at him, waiting for him to continue.
Well, I guess I was feeling kind of weird about stuff, so I'm getting some fresh air before bed.
I hope you feel better. His mouth pulled into a bent smile. He spoke so quietly that you almost missed it.
I think I will.
Cove let himself fall back onto his butt and then all the way down so he was laying on his back. He looked up at the sky. He sat on his chest! Dang! You lowered yourself to sit nearby. He had been lost in thought or was possibly waiting for you to situate yourself, but he started speaking unprompted again.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for being kind of awkward when my mom was leaving.
Surprised, you stared at him a moment. You weren't expecting that.
I just wanted you to know that I talked to my dad. About how I felt and things. It's okay now.
You were genuinely glad to hear that, and it brought a small smile to your face, but your thoughts quickly wandered back to the first day you met Mr. Holden. Did his dad confess about that? From the way Cove talked, you guess he hadn't. So there was more Cove and his dad should talk about, but it was a relief to know that they had made a start. Now was not a good time to bring up what you were thinking, though. You could wait longer to say it. Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page this time, Molly. It was almost unbelievable how much of an impact he made on your life just by moving in next door. You couldn't even imagine what your days might have looked like in a world where you hadn't met him. Cove glanced back at you, waiting for a response, and you had no idea what to say. Then, still without a word from you, Cove shook his head strongly. What?
It's you.
Huh? He snickered before answering. He looked thoroughly amused with your reaction.
That's what you do all the time. So I'm being you.
Oh, ha ha. do it that much. Cove burst into deep laughter. When it slowed, he continued to grin. Honestly, there weren't many people you could think of who could tease you about something like that. Returning his smile, you realized there was no denying that you two have been around each other for a long time. Cove broke the quiet before it could fully settle.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you then. With a final wave, Cove headed for home, but you stayed there a few minutes longer. Your mind kept going back to his simple statement, see you tomorrow. No matter how much was changing around you, there were some things in your life that always seemed to remain true. The hills felt warm to you that night. Before you knew it, you were getting comfortable under the covers in your room. Your mind couldn't help but still be buzzing with thoughts about the future. You felt nervous. Every bit of your gut felt like it was being turned into a pretzel. A new chapter of your life was about to begin, and you were worried what new changes were waiting for you. Slowly, your eyes grew heavy as you drifted off to sleep, your mind spinning with wishful thoughts. No matter what happened next, you could only hope that you would make the most of it. You were ensnared in a dream when a noise from the outside world jostled you. Stubbornly kept my eyes pressed shut. The light clatter continued. Now that you were more alert, you could distinguish it as a tapping sound. Quiet, slow, but persistent. Each beat was like being poked. You couldn't ignore it. You lifted your head from the pillow and looked for the source. Not much work was needed to puzzle it out. It was from the window. With that, you knew exactly what it was. From the color of the light filtering into your room, it was too early for anyone to be awake, including the sun. It had barely hauled itself over the horizon. But that didn't stop some people, it seemed. We're ending summer the same way we started summer. You sat up in bed and opened the window wide. Cool air, not yet warmed by the day, tickled your face as it pushed into your room. And, just as you'd expected, there was your neighbor crouching on your windowsill. He was fully dressed, though not for school. Hi, what's up? Are you going surfing? Take me with you. He was wearing a wetsuit and a shy smile.
Molly.
You stared back, blinking.
So technically, we won't be back to school for a few more hours.
His voice was delicate yet deliberate, each word a careful explanation.
Classes haven't actually started yet. So, do you want to hit the beach with me one more time this summer?
Always. His smile widened affectionately. You rushed to get changed into something suitable while Cove climbed back down to ground level. Your limbs, still half asleep, struggled somewhat as you attempted to coordinate them into a swimsuit, but you got there in the end. Soon you were tiptoeing out of your front door, clutching a towel. Cove was already there to greet you. Your eyes met. Cove's gaze darted to your destination and back to you. You checked the door was closed, gave him a thumbs up, and the two of you leapt into action. Wordlessly, you began to run down the familiar path ahead, Cove beside you. The thrill of your illicit outing made you want to laugh. Not that you dared. If anyone in your family looked out and saw you, then your summer would be back to being over. One glance at Cove told you that he was exactly the same, holding back snickers for fear of being heard and caught. The towel streamed out from under your arm like a cape. You were running so fast downhill that simply keeping your balance and not tumbling down was a real threat. It just wasn't enough of one to make you slow your pace. For every step you took, the beach was a little closer and the day a little brighter. What lay ahead for you would arrive, and you were happy to meet it. Yay! Delightful. In between. On the way to teenagehood. Alright, we did it! Yay! Whew. Alright, well, a lot happened. Had a couple confessions. Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what's gonna happen in step 3 and what kind of Cove I'm gonna get. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week and we'll find out the answers to those questions.